A lot of us will ask, if there is a God and God can do anything, then why doesn't he just show himself? Then I would believe. Then everyone would believe. This whole you gotta have faith thing just seems like a lot of games.
Yeah, and not fun games like Mario Kart or Dutch Blitz. And the stakes are much higher.
To the death?
Even worse, all of humanity is destined for eternal conscious torment. But a few can win a free pass if they get lucky in a game of hide and seek against an invisible being. Welcome to Paulogia, where a former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians. A few months back, we took a look at a video from animated apologetics channel I Am Beggar, and with such positive response, I thought I'd go back and see how he handles the topic of immense personal interest, the notion of divine hiddenness.
Well, it's true. God could reveal himself in any way he wants. So the question is, what would be the best way to do it?
If the eternal fate of every single human hangs in the balance, and if the God claims to love each of those humans, then the best way for God to do it would be in some unmistakable way that is equally and easily accessible to every human at any location at any point in history. Whatever accomplishes that.
But before we can answer that, we have to ask, why would God want to reveal himself to us in the first place? And I think the answer is simple. Think about it. Even if you were a God and you created people, why would you want to reveal yourself to them?
I suppose that depends a great deal on why I made the people. If it was out of narcissism, I'd want to reveal myself so that I could receive praise and boost my ego. Maybe I created them as an elaborate battery to power my car, in which case I might want to reveal myself to guide behavior toward power-producing activities. If I created them because I was lonely, I might reach out for companionship. If as a social experiment, I might reach out to alter variables to see what happens. The options here are endless.
Would it be just so that they would believe in you? Or so they could know you, have a relationship, and open up some sort of connection between you and them?
It might be just to believe in me, if belief in me was going to tell them something correct about their universe, and thereby improve their lives somehow. Like, for example, giving them the key to not being tormented forever. Mr. Beggar's question is clearly a false dichotomy. There are many possible goals for such revelation.
So then the question is, if there is a God, what would be the best way to reveal himself so that you and I could know him?
Okay, we're sticking with the relationship premise. All right, well, it's impossible for two beings to get to know each other if one being doesn't know that the other being exists. Knowledge is a prerequisite.
Well, how would you do it? You could just pull back the curtain and reveal yourself as is. But I don't think we'd be quite ready for that yet.
If the God you're talking about created humans, he could have made us with some mechanism to handle it. This sounds more like a design flaw. According to the Bible, there are creatures called angels who can handle it. This not handle it reason is entirely speculation on Mr. Beggar's part. Maybe we absolutely can handle it without problem. I mean, if the Bible's to be believed, then God revealed himself to Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham, Moses, and the entire wandering Israelite population, and those people all handled it just fine.
And I don't think I could relate to a being that's so far beyond me in every single way.
This is probably correct. For two entities to relate, there's got to be some kind of lowest common denominator appeal going on. When I relate to my dog, it's on the level of animal things: food, physical activity, play, staying warm. There's less common ground if I'm hoping to relate to a single-celled protoplasm. But again, God is the designer in this scenario, so these are all factors within his control.
You could cause all kinds of cosmic signs and wonders. Like, I don't know, big cosmic signs and wonders. And these would probably work for a little while, but let's be honest, people are fickle. And after the 20th or 30th cosmic wonder, we'd be like, oh good, the sun disappeared again as I'm driving to work in the dark again. And there's nothing personal about some cold cosmic force.
Sure, but you'd definitely be convinced that there was a cosmic force out there. So step one is done. That alone might not compel you to want to forge a relationship with the cosmic force, but it absolutely could be achieved in a non-ambiguous way that wouldn't just seem like another physical attribute of the universe.
Thor was a myth, and now I study him in my physics class.
You could come up with a way to reveal yourself to every single person who ever walked the face of the earth individually. But doesn't this seem a little door-to-door salesman?
Hey, how's it going?
You're gonna blow past this one because you think it's cringe? I already listed a few from the Old Testament where God did exactly this. And what about the Apostle Paul? Jesus had already ascended back to heaven, but the story goes he came back for a very personal, one-on-one, individual revelation to Paul. So God likes this method, in principle, but apparently if he does it to scale, that's just a bad look. But here's the other thing. It's incredibly common for Christians to say things like, God called them, or God led them, or God speaks to them with specific call or message. If these modern people are to be believed, then God is selectively giving individual affirmation, and non-believers simply aren't a part of it. Or everyone is getting the same personalized message, and it's simply too ineffective for portions of the population to recognize it. If so, that's a flaw for the being who made the design, not the being with the flawed design.
And when would you do it? At what age? For how long?
Why would it need to be the same for each person? The omniscient, omnipotent creator of the universe would know the best time and duration for each person. And while this video seems primarily concerned with getting to the bare minimum step, intellectual ascent of existence, why would Mr. Beggar's God want to stop there? If the goal is to get to know the creator, shouldn't these personal interactions continue all through life as long as they are welcomed by both parties? Isn't that an actual relationship and actually getting to know each other?
Would you just show up in someone's life physically, spiritually, a voice in the head?
The Bible has example of all of these. So sure, pick one, or any.
And just for clarity and continuity, if you're going to reveal yourself, doesn't it make more sense just to do it once and for everybody, rather than billions and billions and billions of times?
Makes sense for whom? Are you saying that an infinite being doesn't have the time or energy to repeat a process? That God wants to have a relationship with me only so far as he can gain economies of scale and minimize his effort? How is it possibly more clear for God to reveal himself to people who are not me and have those fallible people attempt to relay the information in their definitionally flawed ways? But it's not even second hand. It's fifth hand, 80th hand. We don't even know. To the extent where the messages that I'm told about God are utterly indistinguishable from other ancient fanciful fiction. How has clarity been achieved in this process? This revealing yourself once for all certainly can't be clear for the people who die before you arrive. Those people are just lost.
I'm sure you could very easily just make everyone know you by infusing yourself into their brains, which means no freedom for us.
We're talking about mere intellectual acknowledgement of the existence of a God. That simple prerequisite knowledge doesn't prevent someone from responding in their own way. We're told that Satan and the demons have perfect knowledge of the existence of God, and yet they rebelled. Again, characters like Adam and Eve and Moses all had direct knowledge of God and still managed to keep their free will to sin. Mr. Beggar clearly hasn't given this any thought.
But you can't force a relationship. Who does that? I mean, would you rather your spouse choose you out of their own, free choice? Or because you somehow altered their mind and will?
The bare requirement for a relationship is acknowledgement and awareness that the other being exists. No one can choose me as a spouse if they've never heard of me. This isn't difficult to grasp. I'm incapable of choosing to have a relationship with a God without first believing that he exists. It's at very least a two-step process, and Christians have countless examples of God introducing himself without altering the person's mind to the point of eliminating choice. So what we have is an inconsistent God who is picking and choosing which people to reveal himself to and which people not to. And if God is simply staying hidden from people who he knows will reject him, then I'm being punished not for a choice I'm actually making, but a choice I might hypothetically make.
Or you could just become one of them. Cross over into their time and space, their history, and take on all those little things that make us human.
Cool. That might be good for the relatively small number of people who he will bump into, but it does nothing at all for those who live before or after or merely somewhere else. Talk about inefficient.
Which one of these do you think would be the best way to reveal yourself?
If our eternal fates are at stake, it seems reasonable to expect that God should at least be as self-evident as the sun, the star that our planet orbits around. I don't have to take anyone's word for it. I don't even have to guess. We can disagree about the nature of the sun without questioning that it exists. I'm not saying that exactly, but God is capable of making a thing we all agree exists. So he can do the same for himself.
And if you do become one of them, you could go as anyone you want. A king, a political ruler, a powerful CEO, a superhuman, someone born in that thing you feed your animals out of. I don't know about you, but I know which one I'm following.
In isolation, none of those characteristics are conclusive. They're just style. Does Mr. Beggar start worshipping every baby ever placed in a food dish at some point for some unknown reason?
Capricorn, eh? What are they like?
He's the Son of God, our Messiah, King of the Jews.
That's Capricorn, is it?
No, that's just him.
Oh, I was going to say, otherwise there'd be a lot of them.
By what name are you calling him?
Brian!
Is Mr. Beggar impressed by criteria that have nothing at all to do with social station? And this is just a huge non sequitur.
But is that enough? I mean, you can't just show up in history and start telling everyone you're God.
Hey, I'm God.
People would either think you're out of your mind crazy or just 100%.
That's correct. Testimony alone is insufficient to establish the supernatural. Lying or mistaken is always going to be more probable.
You'd need something else. What if you pre-announced that you were coming? You could inspire a bunch of different writers from different times and different places, all to write about you long before your foot ever hit the ground. In fact, you'd be the only human being in the history of the world ever to be pre-announced.
In order to be pre-announced, you'd have to demonstrate that these prophecies were written before the event in question, written in a way that is clearly and uniquely and unambiguously intended to be a prophecy, have culminated clearly, uniquely, and unambiguously in a single event that can be verified to have happened, and finally, not have been something that people were trying to make happen. I have yet to come across a single so-called prophecy of Jesus that comes close to meeting these criteria. To make matters worse, Jewish people, those to whom were made these so-called pre-announcements, also disagree with me that Jesus is the fulfillment of them. Convince them before you try to convince me. If God wanted to pre-announce himself, he'd be able to do so much more clearly.
But is that enough? I mean, obviously everything you said and did would be absolute, but we don't always get it. We like signs and wonders to confirm things.
Yes, the God who made some of us to require evidence before we believe things would know that some of us will require evidence to believe things.
So maybe you could do some kind of great signs and wonders to confirm things.
Okay, let's grant that happened as described. How would these healings confirm Jesus' divinity to anyone beyond those immediately present? For everyone else in a different physical location, and for everyone to come afterwards, this can be nothing more than a story, indistinguishable from a false story. Once again, for effectiveness, God is much better off using something cosmic or something for each individual. This become a temporal human is the worst way.
Why doesn't God just show himself?
Yeah, But that was 2,000 years ago. I wasn't there.
Now, I know some of you are thinking, yeah, but that was 2,000 years ago. I wasn't there.
Now, that's pretty prophetic. Well done, Mr. Beggar.
Do you think God is bound by space and time?
The God you propose is not, which is just one reason this proposed revelation method seems particularly ill-conceived.
Do you think your mind and your soul is bound by space and time?
My mind is absolutely bound by space and time, as it is undeniably a property of my physical brain. I don't have sufficient reason to think I have a soul, so I can't speak to that.
And I know some of you may not believe in any of this, and that's your choice.
We don't actually choose what convinces us. To some extent, we can choose what data we will expose ourselves to, but that's not the same thing. When presented with evidence, it is either compelling to us or it is not.
But what if there's a chance that God walked on the face of this earth as a human being?
There's a chance. Now what? I can't choose to be convinced of this. Neither history nor testimony can establish that God walked on the face of this earth. I don't make the rules. The ball is in God's court here. We're back to the beginning of the video. Why doesn't God show himself? For those just listening along, Mr. Beggar put on the screen, "Show us the Father, that will be enough. He who has seen me has seen the Father." John 14:19. And here Jesus spells out the problem. Those seeing him may see the Father, but most of the world never saw him. So almost the entirety of humanity is unhelped by this sentiment. If God wants to have a relationship with all humans, he is very, very bad at accomplishing this goal. Thank you so much to my dedicated patrons and members, whose financial support literally makes this channel possible. If you'd like to see more of this former Christian taking a look at the claims of Christians, please tap on the video on screen now, and I'll see you over there. Until next time, later.